Hello, and welcome to The Swing of Things. This episode is brought to you by Acorn Performance Learning Management System, powering U.S. Rowing's new learning platform, The Launch. We invite you to check out Acorn's capabilities on The Launch through your member portal on our website. In this episode, I sit down with Josie Verdonschot, U.S. Rowing's Chief High Performance Officer, to discuss U.S. Rowing's high performance plan as he charts the U.S. national team's path to the Paris 2024 Olympic Games. But before we dive into things with Josie, let's get the latest from our friends across the pond, Row 360 editors Tom Ransley and Benedict Tuffnell.
Thanks, Amanda. It's good to be back. So, Tom, what's happened since the last episode?
It's been busy. We've had the World Rowing Championships, the season finale of 2023, and that's the first chance to qualify boats for Paris, so a lot riding on that. That was awesome. That was in Belgrade. And then we finally had the IOC decision on beach sprints coming to LA 2028.
Yeah, really exciting. Some sad news, though, at the same time.
Yeah, it is tinged with sadness. The lightweights, or the Olympic lightweight program will be no more. So last chance to race there will be in Paris, and then they won't be in LA, sadly.
And then some other interesting news. Recently, the Sinkovic brothers, famous Croatian brothers, they have announced that they're switching back to the pair.
Yeah, that's right. You know, they're double Olympic champions there. They got their first Olympic gold in Rio in the double, and then they've switched to the pair and doubled down, got gold in Tokyo. So that was awesome.
Yeah, I think that was the first men's crew to do that, to win gold in both the double and the pair.
Right. And then they came back to the double, which is, you know, I think they've even said, and it's certainly what everyone thinks, it's their more natural boat. And
they've been at the last two seasons.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so it looked like they were going for Paris, or they were going towards Paris for win the double, and then just announced not going to go there. And it sort of shows how important your sort of strategy is, and how much this recent World Championships means. So they missed out on a gold to the Dutch. They lost. They were unbeaten this season right up until Lucerne, and they got silver at Lucerne and then silver at the Worlds. And obviously they think that, or I feel they probably think that their best chance of getting a gold is going to be in the pair. I'm actually going to speak to them, do an interview this week, so looking forward to finding out. Yeah,
really interesting, because they've only got this year now to bed that in. They've got one season, and then it's Paris.
Right. It's a really short window of time to try and make a switch like this.
Yeah, so they've gone double, pair, double, and now pair.
Right.
Let's focus in on the Paris Olympic qualification that went on at the World Championships in Belgrade. Some good results for the US team.
Yeah, that's right. They're climbing up the medal table a little bit compared to last year. I think they're around 11th on 2023. Strong results on the women. I think you know how the men that qualified the pair and the four. Their four were really impressive. The British have really dominated that event, and probably people were looking at a Brits versus Aussies kind of narrative there. But yeah, the Aussies punched in with a solid silver.
US.
Sorry. The US punched in with a solid silver behind those unbeaten Brits. Disappointment in the men's 8. They directly qualified, and there was 5 tickets, so the final was still really important, but they missed out. They came 6th. But yeah, the women really good. The women's 8, they rode down the Aussies to get silver. Women's double, a really competitive event, that one. Women's lightweight double, new look crew, they did well. They got the silver. I think that's going to be, a really fierce boat to try and break into next year internally in the US team.
Yep. And that US men's 8 that got that 6th place in the final, they will have one more chance to get to Paris.
Yeah, that's in Lucerne, the final Olympic qualification regatta next year.
Yep.
One last thing before we move on, that the Cara Kohler in the women's single, really strong performance, but probably a bit disappointed, just missed the podium there in 4th place.
So this IOC announcement, beach sprint. So just to give you a quick summary, so beach sprints is a new format that's come out in the last few years, really exciting. In a nutshell, the athletes, they start standing on the beach, on the sand, they run down the beach, jump into their boats, they row, they slalom between the buoys, they row out 250 metres, spin round the buoy, and then straight line back to the beach, dive out of the boat onto the sand and run up, and the first one to hit the buzzer stops the clock and wins the race. It's always 1-on-1. So it's a really dynamic, completely different to your traditional classic flat water rowing. It's a really exciting new event, and that's going to be an Olympic event for LA in 2028. So it's huge for the sport. Since the last episode, we also had the World Rowing Beach Sprint Finals, which is the in effect the World Championships for beach sprint rowing, and the US was strong there too.
The US came third. It's been on a real journey, beach sprints. It's fascinating to see basically someone almost invent a sport and pick and choose from, obviously coastal rowing has a long lineage and there's different formats across the world. But yeah, I was speaking to Gwyn Batten, the coastal rowing chair, and really interesting how she's looking to develop the sport and where it's come from as well. So yeah, great things.
And obviously with this IOC announcement, it's going to completely sort of change the game. It's going to draw in a lot of talent, a lot of investment from nations across the world. Now that there's going to be Olympic medals at stake, it's naturally going to attract athletes, and national teams are going to be pouring money into developing those athletes, bringing in coaches in a way that hasn't been seen in these early years of the format. Yossi touches on this a little bit in his conversation with Amanda in this episode, which is coming up. A really interesting conversation they have there as he sort of lays out his plan and his philosophies for the team as he tries to build the US team up for Paris next year and beyond.
Well, with that said, I think that's probably enough from us, don't you think, Ben?
I think you're right. Let's hand back to Amanda, who's speaking to Yossi right now.
Goodbye.
Thanks, Ben and Tom. And now for our main feature. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the swing of things, Yossi Verdonscott. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for this conversation.
Nice to be here.
Yossi, when you joined US Rowing as our head of high performance in 2022, you had to sit down and write down a plan. And now we have that plan outlining the path to Paris 2024. And that's what I'm excited to talk to you about today. So I'm going to jump right in. The United States boasts a massive collegiate rowing program with athletes rowing in colleges, more athletes rowing in college than any other country. However, we're still figuring out how to turn this into a pipeline for our elite program. There's a significant reason behind the concept of US rowing needing to, quote unquote, wake the sleeping giant, which we're going to talk about. And we have to tap into these resources to develop and maintain a strong national team. But to do that, you've talked about needing to find our own way, an American way to go about it. I use this term because our approach to funding and supporting our teams is quite distinct from most other countries. So could you provide a couple of specific examples of how we're addressing these challenges to create a unique identity, culture, and presence as outlined in our high performance plan?
Well, it's a very interesting question because on one hand, there's a lot of rowing at colleges. On the other hand, it's very difficult to have a cooperation the way I would be used to have that in other countries, because there's rules, there's regulations about how much training, who can coach, when they can coach. That makes it kind of interesting, because what you need is touching points. So what we're trying to do now in our next step, and that is changing the role of Brett Gorman, who is our director of pathways, which means that she should be the spider in the web, communicating with all our stakeholders and to find clever and new ways how to create touch points. Because basically what you want is to connect to people and give them time to develop, but follow their development as well. So one thing would be, one of the steps that we are doing will be, we will be hosting a high performance under 23 camps in winter in a period where it's possible for a collegiate athlete to enter. We will combine the talent ID days for the under 19s and make them open for under 23s as well. So you have to be creative. And having said all that, it is such a loss. In the past, there was the freshmen's aids, and I think that's one of the things that is really has been historically one of the big advantages of US rowing, knowing that there's always this new group of people coming into the system But as a coach, to put the best people in their best boats, that they have to use international recruits in the Freshman's 8, where that actually should be a feeder system, probably coming out of different sports. So having that cross-sport entry point for people and having kind of an accelerated learning curve, we called it Freshman's 8. So everybody has to understand that we have to make a case to get those back.
Yeah. Do you think we will get those back? I mean, do you think what would motivate the collegiate programs to make that shift back?
It's up to the organizations themselves. It's not up to us to set rules for them. But it would be interesting to show our point of view why it could be beneficial for both.
If you could snap your fingers and decide when an athlete, a future rower, steps into the pipeline and gets an oar or two oars in their hands, what age point would you want that? Would you want that happening in middle school? Does it have to happen by college? Would you rather it happen later or earlier?
Well, that's an interesting question because it's not so much age related, it's more athletic age related. If you look at it, consider gymnastics. What's the age that people enter?
Tiny, little, I don't know, 3 maybe? 4?
Yeah, when do they exit?
16, 17? I don't know. I'm making that up. I think very young.
No, I would say that Simone Biles is a little bit older, but it is true that people enter very early, and it is true that they peak at a very early age. So the same goes for rowing, that you need a certain time for development. So I would always think that rowing is a sport that should be post-puberty. So that means as long as you are rowing and you're still growing, probably it makes sense not to put too much value on your ERG scores and not to put too much value on how fast you are in the boat. You should develop skills, flexibility and feeling for the boat, etc. But that's not so much into competition. That's more developing small boat skills and just become an all-round athlete. And you can do that rowing, but you can also do that with track and field or swimming. So to me, it doesn't matter, but from the moment that people enter the system, that can be at 15 or that can be at 19 or it can be at 23, expect it to take another 6 to 8 years to get to the Olympics.
So talking about small boats, that brings me to thinking about a refocus or a focus on away from the big boats and onto the small boats in the United States. Can you talk about that a little bit in terms of your plan?
Yes. So first of all, what we need is to develop small boat skills, not so much because we want to have more chances at medals, but I think it's part of the education of a person. So look at it this way. Differential learning as a learning model presumes that you put people in different learning situations, and always being in the same learning situation, just sit in the 8, and is not beneficial for the level that you can reach in the end. So that's why being challenged in training is important, and then it doesn't matter what you are educating for. So that can be challenged in a single or can be challenged in a pair. What we have to be aware of, that developing small boat skills is essential. And then in the end, what boats we point at, well, where we can get the best medal. So people often in the United States say, yeah, it's all nice, but it's all child's play, because basically what matters is the men's 8 and the women's 8. Well, I know that from a funding perspective, and it's not just Americans, the Dutch are the same, the Germans are the same, not many other countries. Like when the Dutch king comes to a regatta, he was there in 2014 for the World Championships, and his only question was, yeah, nice, but what about the men's 8? Because he was there at the podium in '96 when they won the gold in Atlanta. So that's the focus of people. But for us, as the experts, we should acknowledge that every medal has the same color, and we should look at A, develop individual skills, and B, offer the best athletes the best options.
So speaking of options for athletes, one part of the long-term plan is to upgrade our training center in Princeton, which is a process that's already begun and everyone's excited about, as well as setting up other training centers around the country. And it's probably fairly easy for people to understand that we need better tools and physical resources to support our athletes, right? What's less clear to many is how we plan the training for the team, individual boats and even individual athletes, over the course of not just months, but years. And you touched on this in the beginning of this conversation when you said, let's not plan for the Olympics a year out. Can you give us a broad overview of how you approach this? Can you share specific examples of how an athlete benefits from this method?
This could take a long time, or we can take the shortcut. So if I try to explain it in the short way, it's like this. So presume you just came back from the Olympics, and you might be teased into go for another 4 years. But if I would repeat the same load to you every year and year and year, there's two laws. One is your return of investment always gets lower when you always keep doing the same. So, but also the commitment of a person is more difficult if one would not see any change and or difference, because basically, look at it, your economic, your social, your academic development comes to a standstill in the Olympic year. So looking at it from that perspective, one would say, so as a training cycle over a week or over a month or over a year has variations, it also has to have variations over 4 years. So look at it at investing more in your social life by not being obliged to be in a training center, but create hotspots where people train together, but within their own environment, having a little bit more time to do their job, having a little bit more time to spend with their friends, having a little bit more time to to work on their own, creates the resilience for the build-up in the year. So what you do is the number of days that you train together and the way that you train should also be a build-up in 4 years, because that's how you peak. And then training centers, they play a major role in concentrating assets and also helping people to build their life around one place. And that's why we cannot just concentrate it on one spot. So you talk about Princeton, obviously there's going to be a development at Benderson. And sure, now, with the announcement of the coastal rowing, how easy is it to think of combining a flat water center with a coastal center, maybe somewhere on the West Coast, and having a Boston training center where Olympic and Paralympic are training together. We offer more opportunities for people to build their life in a stable environment. So there's less one directional life for 4 months, seeing nothing else but your roommate and Mercer or the estuary or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that's impressed me so much in working with you, is that you have the meta plan and strategy that goes across years. You're capable of creating this big picture vision of where you want us to be in 2024, and now already thinking 2028, of course. But then what a lot of people probably don't know, maybe the athletes know, and I bet the coaches who work with you now know, that you're also the granular. I mean, you are also a master of that. So for anyone who hasn't seen, your spreadsheets of, what a specific day, week, hour looks like, or the plan for a specific athlete and the data that you're collecting now, I see it as a very different approach to progress.
Every person is one. So I have to, at a certain point after Paris, you didn't hire me for Paris. I always have said, so you mentioned Paris a couple of times, but I always said Paris and beyond. The only thing that I totally understand is no results in Paris, no Josi, because it works like that in high performance. So on one hand, I've always worked with the vision that we have to look and build a sustainable system for the future, but also we need short-term results. But in order to guarantee that, we have to get into a conversation with each and every individual athlete to make a planning for the next 4 years. Because otherwise, I cannot just sit here and check the list in January who is turning up in January 25. It doesn't work like that. I have to have a conversation with each and every athlete how to make it possible for that athlete to continue. And it doesn't mean that all those athletes are going to be there, but it is not very helpful. And obviously, there will be people that will be entering the system very late because they had all kinds of things to do. But basically, it's much better to stay connected over the period in between as well. I mean, that's the best guarantee to get them back and to create competition, because the more competition, the more people we can have in our system, the better we'll be.
Yes. And I think the results that coming out of Worlds helped to create some momentum and enthusiasm there too, for thinking, well, I think this approach is working. And when you think about mapping out plans for athletes, you are in a way that we have not before relying on data, sports science, altitude training. Tell us more about what you're doing differently in this plan on that day-to-day coaching level. Like, what's different about it?
I don't want to be presumptuous and think that all kinds of science was not applied, but there was no structure. So I do think that individual athletes, individual coaches really are doing the right things and were doing the right things. The only thing is there was nobody who connected the dots or who connected the teams. So the first thing is we work out of 1 yearly planning, or actually 4 yearly planning. When I arrived in January, February, I had the first conversation with the athletes, and I showed them how the next 2-3 years would look like. And unfortunately, they still inquire every month about the next plan, because they are used to a situation where it would always change. But we plan over a longer time. Then we plan as a team. We do things together. We compete together. We go to regattas together, not just with the women or the men or sculling or sweep. We integrate in camps together, which means that there's a bigger cooperation. Then we train of one program. It might be that any program is good, but if you train of one program, you can check yourselves. You can have regular your own kind of assessment of where everybody is. Then we want to support it with scientific testing that we, so lactate testing or VO2 max testing, that we apply for all the athletes that are in the Olympic team, not just the ones that are by accident in one training center. So that's why we integrate a 3 weeks altitude camp in Colorado Springs this year again, with all the qualified boats plus the men's 8 and the men's double, so our top contenders, just to bring all the athletes together. So we function as a group. That is a big difference. Then the science that we apply, heart rate monitoring, looking at the recovery of people, blood draws, etc. It has all been applied, but it has not been applied systematically. So I do not think that I'm kind of inventing the wheel, but I do think that I make sure that the wheel is on every car that is driving in this country.
That's a good description. One aspect of our athlete support that stands out to me is how we acknowledge the reality of rowing as a sport that doesn't provide a source of income for its athletes. There's support that comes from the USOPC, the direct athlete support. You've done a lot to bring in more funding and stipends for the athletes. But it's important to recognize that being a rower, as we know, doesn't lead to a long-term career with substantial earnings. This is the time when young adults are typically trying to enter the job market, establish their careers, build their networks. So can you talk about what we're doing to help athletes avoid delaying their future careers, and maybe share an example or two?
Yeah, sure. To me, it's very important that that the athletes do not have the idea that they have to put everything on hold. So the first step was to make the stipends not so much dependent on where you were training, but just make it dependent of performance. Very simple. And then also upgrade the level of the stipends. So any athlete that qualified for the Olympics and was in the finals, they received a monthly stipend of $2,000. And that's still not a really high number, but it is already a start to for people to at least be able to not depend on a full-time job. But then, still, if they want to continue their career, most of them don't like to just take a job that has no future in it. So that's why it's important to have partners like Broadridge, to have partners on the longer term that offer career opportunities. And there have been initiatives in that respect in the past as well. So we should work more on that to find corporate partners that offer the opportunity for an athlete to combine an internship, earning some money, with their rowing, because those partners understand how. And sometimes we cannot find solutions, but I do think that we will be able to support in a better way if we find more partners who are interested in that. And there will be, because our network, our alumni, there's so many people in really great situations who want to support and who totally do understand the high performance demands.
So I want to end with, is there anything about the plan or anything from the plan that you're enthusiastic about that we haven't touched on that you want to bring up?
Oh, I love your question. So now you presume that I have checked in my mind every dot on the, well, basically I know we did. It's 3 things, Amanda. Infrastructure, check. We need more training centers. 2, people, athletes, we've done that. Check. 3, program, scientifically supported. Check. Those are the 3 items we have to work and we have to talk about. Program, people, infrastructure.
You passed the test. Well done. Well done. Okay. Well, thank you, Josi, for your time today, as always. And we'll be excited to watch this plan unfold together.
Oh, do we watch or do we make it unfold?
I think we're both. I think we're doing both, right? Hopefully we will make it unfold, and then we will also watch at the same time.
That's good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. See ya.
I hope you enjoyed hearing from Josi. Now is the point in our show when we would normally ask Josi for a quick update on the national team. But having already taken far too much of Josi's time in this episode, we have Princeton Training Center head coach Jesse Folia here to step in and bring us the latest from the team. Hi, Jesse. Good to see you.
Hey, Amanda. It's great to see you as well. I mean, you were only here, I guess, a couple days ago, so maybe we should have you give the high performance update now that you've seen it all in person.
I think you're the better person for that. So, Jesse, excited to talk to you, and would love an update both on what's happening now in terms of high performance. Yes, I saw it with my own eyes on the water last week, but from your perspective, what's happening? And then what's your feedback coming back from World Championships in Belgrade?
Well, I think I'll probably start a little bit with your second question there, because I think, the phase of the season that we're in at the moment is sort of evaluating and processing the year as it just sort of transpired. We kind of operate in this World Championship to World Championship cycle on a smaller level, but obviously always building towards this 4-year goal, or in this particular case, sort of 3 years of building towards the Olympics. So the first thing was obviously number of boats to qualify directly for the Olympic Games. From a comparative standpoint, if we're looking at Olympic and Paralympic events, so 2022 to 2023, I think we had 8 qualification spots in 2022, and that transitioned into 10 qualification spots in 2023. From an A finalist perspective, that was 5 A finalists in 2022, and then that's 11 A finalists in 2023. And then from a medals perspective, we went from 2 medals in 2022 to 6 medals in 2023. So I think, again, moving in the right direction, setting ourselves up as we move into the Olympic year to, again, hopefully be able to build off of that. I mean, I think the big thing as a high performance athlete pool at the moment, we're a very young group. I'm young as a coach within the national team system. Josi is not young from a coaching perspective, but young within the context of being part of U.S. rowing. And I think we're sort of evolving and learning how to win. We have yet to be able to push through and win a couple gold medals, but I think that that's all part of where we are from that hierarchy standpoint. So we've taken some time off. We're starting officially week number 2 of the yearly program. Here in Princeton, we have a fantastic group of people. We have about 24 athletes, mix of men and women, sweep and sculling, heavyweights and lightweights. We kind of touch all the bases when it comes to the components of our national team. And to be honest with you, it's a real blast. We had 3x4K on Saturday. And, we had women's pair lining up with the men's single to do pieces, women's lightweight single with the heavyweight women's single, women's 4, men's pair, which I think is sort of the type of environment that makes the training fun. Like, we do all these long distance, repetitive sessions. So being able to do something competitive and also doing it in the framework of like the whole team out there at the same time doing the same thing has been really enjoyable.
Well, Jesse, thank you for the time today, and thank you for all the work you're doing with the team.
Oh, well, thank you for coming down last week, man. It was great to have you on site and seeing what we're doing firsthand, and would encourage anyone to check in if they're interested in getting a more up-close look at what our high-performance athletes are doing.
And that's all for this episode of The Swing of Things. Don't forget to like, share, and follow from wherever you get your podcasts. It helps others to find us. Please subscribe and don't miss our next episode. It's a good one. We have a very special guest, Daniel Brown, the author of best-selling novel Boys in the Boat. Soon to be released as a feature film on December 25th, directed by George Clooney and telling the improbable story of the University of Washington men's crew that won the gold at the 1936 Olympics. Thanks for listening.